His weekly letter, President Cyril Ramaphosa reminds us that International Women's Day, which has been celebrated for more than a century, is part of the struggle to realize women's rights in the social, political, legal, reproductive, health and other spheres. The Women's Charter, which was drawn up in 1994, notes that at the heart of women's marginalisation in South Africa are the attitudes and practices that confine women to the domestic arena and reserve for men the arena where political power and authority reside. Our next speaker was thrust into the public space as a student activist fighting a school system that wouldn't let her wear her hair as is. Zulaikha Patel has continued agitating for social and racial justice, and she joins us now via Zoom. A very good morning to you, Zulaikha. Thank you so much for making the time. As I said in my introduction, you were thrust into the world as a young activist fighting a school system that wouldn't allow you to be yourself. What prompted you to continue the fight for social justice?
Good morning to you too. Thank you for having me. What pushed me to continue the fight for social justice is what led me to begin the fight for social justice. And what led me to begin that was the existence of injustice in society, injustices that I had experienced and I continue to experience as a young Black South African woman. And so my fight for social justice will continue, and my role as a social justice activist will continue for as long as those very same injustices are existent in our society. Because what we need to understand is that policies form part of larger systems. They form parts, they're like the panels of a machine. And so for as long as those machines of exploitation and oppression are still existent and still are the machines that run our society and continue to exploit and oppress the majority of our people, being Black women in our country particularly, my fight for social justice will continue, and so will my role. Because what prompted me to begin was I did not want generations that would walk after me to continue to experience those very same injustices. And so I have a mandate and agenda to not allow those that will come after me to deal with the very same injustice I'm dealing with. Young Black feminists that will walk after me should not be having the conversations that young Black feminists in my current generation are having.
And you know how they say the youth is lost on the young. You're really using your energy as a young person, but you're also an ambassador for the Charlotte Maxeke Institute, and you're also involved in the drive to decolonize Africa. First, tell us about the year of Charlotte Maxeke. I know we're counting down to the 7th of April 2021. The president also speaks about it a lot. What does it entail?
And so this year has been declared her 150th, as she would be turning 150 years old on the 7th of April. And so what it entails is a celebration of her legacy and the call that she's left behind, because she was a colossus in our history. She's a name that her name is a name that should be known not only in our country, but it should stretch across oceans, because that essentially was her legacy. As you know, she was a woman of first. She was the first Black women in Southern Africa to obtain a BSc degree in the early 1900s, and she obtained it in the States at Ohio and Wilberforce University. And so her legacy is one that stretches across oceans and isn't just constrained to the corners of our country. And so what it entails is that this year we won't only be celebrating her legacy but however, we will be revitalizing it, as her work is still relevant. Her work, the letters that she had written at the time, she had written a letter in the early 90s to the leaders of the then formed ANC, which was then previously known as the South African National Natives Congress. And so she'd written a letter to them demanding a seat for women in politics, as to where the presence of women is in politics. How can you discuss liberating a country without women present, where are the women? And so that is still relevant till this day, as we still have the issue of women being underrepresented in roles of leadership, yet that does not reflect the population statistics, as women make up the global majority, not just the majority in our country, but the global majority. And so it is imperative that women need to be in leadership positions to represent the majority of the people. And so her work is still relevant, and she's a very long call that we have to answer as a country. Importantly, and it's not just for racial justice, and also in, as you mentioned, decolonization. She has a quote where she mentioned, and she said that she wishes that our continent, Africa, can lose this name being called the dark continent and properly be called the continent of light, which we are, as the continent carries a light in it. And so her legacy is one that it's remarkable. It's remarkable. And it is one that we should be engaging in every day, not just this year. We, as the Institute, we are going to be involved in continuous activities such as dialogues, which we have been having over the past 2 months since we began. And not just dialogues, but expanding on the current work, such as the Bring Her Up program, which is a program that is very close to my heart and is something I actively participate in the Institute. And what that is that it is a network formed to bring up the girl child, and it's focused in five communities in the country. And so we're hoping to expand over that. Those 5 communities being Freedom Park, Kliptown, Davidson, Hammanskraal, and as well as Soweto. And so what we do with the program is we take a group of young girls in their early teens and still in their teens as well, and they gain mentorship as well as skills so that they are able to empower themselves. Because one thing that we do emphasize is that women need to be given resources to empower themselves and not wait on someone to come and empower them. People are able to empower themselves. And so we are going to be expanding on the current existing programs and also starting more long-lasting things that are going to show her legacy, and those are going to be revealed and announced in due time over the course of this year. And we do have a very, very, very great projects that we will be beginning with this year that are going to cement Charlotte Maxeke's legacy and will show her long-lasting legacy to preserve it.
Awesome. Now, the theme for International Women's Day is women's leadership and achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 world. How are you interpreting this theme?
How that needs to be interpreted given the current pandemic, which has deepened inequalities that were already existent. And so it's left women in a more vulnerable position, women and girls. And so that needs to be interpreted in empowering women, as well as not just empowering women, but really grasping those inequalities from the root and not dealing with just symptoms of the problem, but grasping it from the root, because those inequalities were existent before the pandemic. And so we need to start dealing with those and also amplifying the voices of women, because a lot of women have been left unemployed due to the pandemic, have lost jobs. Girls have been put in a position to leave school. Girl children have also been forced to take up roles as being parents, as children and head up households, because parents are no more. As we've lost many lives, it's unfortunate that we've lost many lives due to the pandemic, and so children have had to take up roles of leading households, which most of the time happens to be girl children who are disadvantaged and are forced to leave school. And so those are the things we need to focus on currently, and focusing on ensuring that their education is not disadvantaged with the pandemic, by ensuring that every girl child can access free sanitary towels. It is about time. This is something which activists, mental health activists, social justice activists have been bringing the call for free sanitary pads for girls before the pandemic. And it's about time, because more people have been left vulnerable due to poverty increasing and deepening with the pandemic. That's what we need to focus on, as well as employment.
I know you're rushing for another meeting. Just a quick one. How should your generation of women find a balance between activism, which is what you do, and self-actualization in the complex world we live in. I imagine you have had to forego some of the dreams that you had for yourself in order to have this fight.
You know, for me, because I believe so much in the ideology of Black consciousness, I in a way bring those together. I find myself in my activism as well, and it's very tied together. Self-actualization in your activism, as well as making sure that you do find yourself in your activism. And because I during that time, when I became an activist, I was at a very tender age. I was quite young. I was still a child, and so I've had to also find a distinct balance between two lives, you know, and but at the same time tying those two together and not separating them, because in my fight as an activist, it was also for the issues around identity, and so I had to bring in self-actualization back.
Well, let's thank you very much for talking to us today. Just a quick one: what are you doing today with regards to IWD?
Thank you so much. And so in closing, and this is something that I actually want to bring to everyone watching and society as a whole and the country at large, is that because currently today I don't have like specific things that I'm engaging in, because I make it a point that I don't particularly only engage in women's rights, in the attainment for social justice for women, and engaging in women's history, given that it's also Women's History Month, only during these days and only on International Women's Day. And so what we need to do is have that commitment and energy to engage in these issues every single day, because that is the only way that we are going to achieve social justice and reach the attainment of women's rights for all women in our country, if we are actively engaging in these issues every single day and not just only dealing with them on a particular day. And what I do want to say is that I think that given the urgency of these issues, the urgency with the scourge in gender-based violence in our country, is that we have to shy away from what I would define as just doing simple PR for a certain day to ensure that it's done because this day is labeled International Women's Day, but actually engaging in issues every single day, and not just only having large budgets for events that are not necessarily going to have a long-term sustainable impact in changing things, in bringing about tangible change for women, where women can see that change manifest right before their eyes. And what we need to do is not only have those budgets, but invest them in women every single day, and invest them in changing policies and ensuring that these structures that continue to exploit and oppress women are abolished, and ensuring and really dealing with the issue of what truly is challenging women right now. That's where we need to have our investments in, and not necessarily in hosting large events that probably do not necessarily have a long-term impact, other than just having an event for a day where people attend, and what then happens, nothing truly happens after the event. And so what I do want to say is that we should be treating these issues as if it's International Women's Day every single day.
Can't argue with you there. Thank you so much for your time, Zulaikha Patel, and really awesome work that you're doing. Zulaikha Patel is a social justice and anti-racism activist, speaking to us today as we reflect on International Women's Day. Thank you so much for your time.